Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming back to the Love and Betrayal channel. Today, I have a new and quite interesting story to share with you. The man I fell for didn't exist. I met him at a bookstore. Of all places, not a party, not through a dating app, a real quiet corner of a little secondhand bookstore. He stood in the aisle, flipping through the picture of Dorian Gray, his thumb tracing the edge of the page like he'd read it 1,000 times before. Good taste, I said casually, pointing to the book. He looked up, smiled softly, and replied, "Only if you can handle a man with secrets." I should have taken that as a warning. Instead, I laughed. And that's how it started. He said his name was Ethan Cole. Tall, charming, effortlessly intelligent. He had this calm way of speaking, like nothing rattled him. Within days, I knew I wanted to see him again. Within weeks, I was falling hard. He was thoughtful. Sent flowers to my office, not just roses, but sunflowers when I had a bad week. Made dinner from scratch on Sundays. Took me to vintage movie screenings and art exhibits I didn't even know existed in our city. Everything felt safe until it didn't. It started with little things. A missed call he said he never saw. A weekend business trip that didn't show up on his social media when he was usually the type to post every cappuccino. A different accent when he spoke in his sleep. I brushed them off. We all have our mysteries, right? One night, after a few months of dating, we had dinner at his place. His phone buzzed. He didn't check it right away, but I glanced at the screen. The name read Lucas. An name's different, Lucas. But when he picked it up, he answered, "Hey, it's Ethan." My heart skipped. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Then came the emails. I wasn't snooping, swear. He asked me to check a restaurant reservation in his inbox, and while searching, I saw it. A message from a law firm. Subject line, Lucas Hawthorne, document update. I froze. Lucas is not Ethan. I clicked. And what I read made my blood run cold. He wasn't Ethan Cole. He was Lucas Hawthorne, a man with sealed court records, a name change filed 5 years ago, and connections to a lawsuit involving fraud and a missing person case. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I didn't confront him that night. I played along, smiled, laughed at his jokes. But inside, everything shattered. After I left his place, I sat in my car shaking. I called my best friend, Marissa. "I don't think I know who I'm dating. What happened?" "His name isn't real." Over the next week, I spiraled. I searched, I Googled, I went deeper than I ever thought I would. And I found articles, archived news clippings. Lucas Hawthorne, age 32, under investigation for involvement in a tech company collapse that cost investors over $3 million. But no arrests, no conviction, just disappearance. And then suddenly, a new name showed up in a different city. Ethan Cole. He changed everything. His name, his look, his job. He rebuilt himself. Right into my life. I couldn't sleep. Every laugh we shared, every kiss, every secret I told him. Was I talking to a lie the whole time? Still, some part of me didn't want to believe it. I needed to see him again, face to face. So I invited him over. Dinner, my place. Just like normal, he arrived with wine, smiling like nothing was wrong. And for a moment, I almost forgot. But I couldn't unsee the truth. I handed him the glass of wine. He sat on the couch, and then I asked, "Ethan, is that really your name?" He paused. Smile faded. Eyes narrowed just slightly. "What kind of question is that?" I didn't blink. "Just answer it." He stood slowly, didn't raise his voice, didn't act shocked, just stared at me, and said, "You weren't supposed to find out yet." "You weren't supposed to find out yet." His words echoed in my head, like a whisper carved into, yes, a whisper carved into stone. I stared at him, at the man I had let into my home, into my heart, into places I hadn't let anyone reach in years. And now he stood there, not shocked, not panicked, just exposed. "So it's true," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," just like that. No denial, no attempt to spin it. He didn't even flinch. "Your name isn't Ethan Cole." He shook his head slowly. "It hasn't been for a long time." The silence between us thickened. I couldn't move, could barely breathe. Every part of me screamed to run, but another part, a quieter, more dangerous one, wanted to know, "Who are you then, really?" He sighed, walked over to the window, didn't look at me when he spoke. "My real name is Lucas Hawthorne. I changed it 5 years ago after everything fell apart." "Everything?" "My company, my life, everything I thought I had built." I stayed silent. Let him talk. Let him dig his own grave, or maybe reveal the truth I never saw coming. I was in tech, built a company with a few friends. It grew too fast. We got reckless, took funding we shouldn't have. One day I woke up and realized I wasn't just in over my head, I was drowning. So you disappeared? No, I walked away. I didn't break any laws, but people blame me anyway, investors, partners, the media. He finally turned to me. You can Google what they said, I'm sure you have, but you won't find the whole truth. I folded my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. So instead of facing it, you became Ethan Cole. New name, new city, new life. And you thought, what, no one would ever find out? He stepped closer. I didn't expect to meet someone like you. Don't. No, listen, please. I didn't come here to lie to you, not in the beginning. In the beginning? I snapped. Lucas, if that's even who you are, this has been a lie from day one. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He sat down slowly on the couch, like his legs finally gave up, holding the weight of all the masks. I used to think reinvention was freedom, he said quietly. But the truth is, it's just another prison, one where you lock yourself inside and throw away the key. I wanted to scream, to demand why he'd let me fall for him, why he'd shared my bed, met my friends, made promises he had no right to make. But all I could do was stare, because the man in front of me, he wasn't the stranger I thought I'd uncover. He was worse. He was someone I almost loved. You told me you were from Vermont, I whispered. I was born in Chicago. You said you worked in marketing. I work freelance. Startups, tech ghostwriting mostly. You said your parents were dead. His eyes dropped. That part wasn't a lie. That cracked me. I turned away. Tears threatened the edges of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. He didn't get to see me cry. Not now. Not when everything had been so carefully, perfectly crafted. What else? I said. What else haven't you told me? He didn't answer. And that silence? That was louder than anything. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. Please. Get out, Lucas. He stood. I stood slowly, walked past me, then stopped. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could keep the past buried, but the closer I got to you, the more I wanted you to know the real me. I just didn't know how to start telling the truth. I didn't say a word. He stepped out into the hallway, turning back once. His eyes were red, but I wasn't sure if it was regret or just another performance. Then he was gone. I closed the door, locked it, slid down to the floor, and sobbed, not because I missed him, but because I didn't know who I missed. Was it Ethan? Was it Lucas? Was it anyone real at all? My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I'll leave you alone if that's what you want, but there's one more truth you haven't found yet, and you deserve to know. I stared at the screen. The message deleted itself after 5 seconds. Gone, like he had never existed. But I knew better now. He was real, and so were the lies, and I wasn't done digging. The message haunted me. There's one more truth you haven't found yet. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea. It was a puzzle piece, and I couldn't look away. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling while Cooper, my terrier, lay beside me, snoring softly. I kept replaying every moment in my head. The bookstore. The first date. The first time he said, I love you. Each one felt real. But now, I questioned if even the way he looked at me was rehearsed. The next morning when I called in sick to work, I needed space. Him. And most of all, answers. I started with the law firm, the one in the email I saw in his inbox. A quick search brought me to their homepage. I didn't call. Instead, I searched court records, public cases, depositions, archived legal documents, and there it was. Lucas Hawthorne, co-founder of Avedon Tech, a name that used to carry respect, until it didn't. I scanned through pages of documents, lawsuits, shareholder complaints, discrepancies in investment disclosures. But something didn't add up. Yes, there was fraud, but Lucas was never officially charged. In fact, one of the depositions described him as the whistleblower who tried to walk away. I froze. Wait, wasn't he the villain? Or had I been told the wrong version? I dug deeper. News blogs, tech forums, whispers. A woman named Claire Young came up again and again, a name I didn't recognize, until I found a buried article. Former Avedon Tech executive Claire Young denies allegations of insider manipulation after partner Lucas Hawthorne disappears from the company. I clicked the image. Claire was stunning, cold, sharp eyes. But what caught my breath wasn't her face. It was the necklace she wore, a thin silver chain with a familiar charm. The same charm on the bracelet Ethan, no, Lucas, gave me on our 3-month anniversary. He said it was custom made, said it reminded him of a better time. I stared at the photo. Was Claire the reason he ran? Or was she part of what he was running from? I needed to know. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I used a contact I hadn't spoken to in years, an ex colleague from a digital forensics firm. You're calling me about a guy, he teased. I'm calling you about a lie. Within hours, he sent me a file, compiled from cached data, old domains, and scrubbed profiles, and buried deep inside, a photo from 6 years ago, a conference event, Lucas and Claire, smiling, holding hands, wearing press badges that labeled them founders of Avedon Tech. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. He didn't just lie about his name. He lied about the woman he said he never knew. Because I remembered clearly. That night we talked about past relationships. I had asked, ever been in love before me? He smiled. Not the kind that mattered. And now here she was. Not a ghost, not a fling, but his partner in every way. The next day, a letter arrived at my door. No return address, neat handwriting. Inside, if you're reading this, I assume you found Claire, but you haven't found what she did. The truth is, I wasn't hiding from justice. I was hiding from her. And soon you might have to. There was no signature. But I knew it was him. My heart pounded as I read the letter. Because this wasn't just about a man who changed his name. It was about a past that refused to stay buried. And now it was dragging me down with it. After the letter, I couldn't sit still. Every creak in the apartment, every shadow behind my window, every car parked a little too long on my street. It all felt like someone was watching. Claire Young. Her name clung to my thoughts like smoke. Was she just a scorned ex-business partner, a woman wronged? Or something worse? I needed answers. So I went back to where it all started, the bookstore, where I met Ethan. No Lucas. Maybe I hoped to find something. Or maybe I wanted to feel like I had some control again. But when I stepped inside, there she was. Claire, sitting in the same aisle, holding the picture of Dorian Gray, reading it page by page like it was the first time. But I knew it wasn't a coincidence. She looked up, met my eyes, and smiled. Not sweetly, not warmly, but like a hunter acknowledging another predator. He used to say this book reminded him of me, she said casually, the portrait that hides the truth, beautiful on the outside, rotting on the inside. I stood frozen. Claire, you've been busy, she continued, flipping a page, researching, digging. I admire that. I swallowed hard. Why are you here? Because he reached out to you. And now, I need to know what he told you. Her tone was calm, too calm. Like she'd rehearsed this moment. I stayed quiet. She closed the book and stood. She was taller than I expected, elegant, sharp eyes that didn't blink. Lucas is a brilliant liar, she said, but he never finishes the game. He always walks away when it gets messy. What did you do to him? I asked quietly. She smirked. What makes you think I did anything? I narrowed my eyes. Because he's hiding from you. Clara tilted her head. Darling, everyone's hiding from someone. She stepped closer. But you're not just anyone, are you? You're the girl he let in, the one he tried to protect. Protect from what? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled something from her coat pocket, a flash drive. She handed it to me. When you're ready to see the rest of the story, watch what's inside. Why would I trust you? You already trusted him. She winked, and look where that got you. She turned and walked away. No goodbye, no threat. I stood there shaken, holding the flash drive like it might explode. When I got home, I locked the door, closed the curtains, turned off my phone. Then I plugged it in. There were only two files. Security cam to the woman and it moved. Confession Lucas Dempsey. My hands trembled. I clicked the first one. Grainy footage from an office hallway. Lucas, no Ethan, walking fast. Claire, trailing behind him. They were arguing, though the audio was silent. She grabbed his arm. He yanked away. She pulled something from her purse, a folder, shoved it into his chest. He threw it on the floor. Stormed out. She stayed. Smiling, I opened the second file. Lucas sitting in front of a camera. Eyes tired. Face pale. If you're watching this, I guess Claire found you. Or you found the pieces she left behind. Either way, I owe you the truth. He looked down, then back at the lens. Claire and I didn't just run a company together. We were engaged. I loved her, but I didn't see what she was doing until it was too late. She moved money behind my back, used my name to sign deals. When it all crashed, she had the proof that I was the face, and she walked away clean. He leaned forward. I disappeared because I had to, not just to protect myself, but to protect the next person she'd try to destroy. He paused. I didn't expect it to be you. My heart dropped. He continued, if she's near you now, be careful. Clara doesn't lose, and she doesn't forget. The screen went black. I sat in silence, head spinning. I didn't know who to believe. Lucas, the man who lied about everything, or Claire, the woman who never said anything, but still terrified me. One thing was clear. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about survival. It started with the feeling, that slow, crawling sense that someone was watching me. Not just paranoia, not just anxiety. Instinct. The day after watching the videos, I tried to go back to normal. Coffee, emails, answering messages I'd been ignoring, but everything felt heavier, like my world had shifted on its axis. And I didn't know how to tell anyone why. I stepped out of my apartment, headphones in, pretending to scroll through my phone. But I wasn't listening to music. I was listening to footsteps. There was a man across the street. Nothing unusual at first. Black coat, baseball cap, pretending to read a newspaper. Except he wasn't turning the pages. I walked to the cafe down the block, ordered a latte, sat near the window. 5 minutes later, he walked by. Didn't stop, didn't look directly at me. But he slowed down just enough. And I knew. I left the cafe through the side door, looped around 2 streets, checked my reflection in shop windows. There he was, still behind me, not too close, but too consistent. My heart raced. What do I do? Call the police and say what? Hi, I dated a man who lied about his name, and now I'm being followed by someone I can't prove exists. They'd laugh me out of the precinct. Instead, I ducked into a bookstore. Not the one where I met Lucas. A different one, newer. Yeah, newer, brighter. I waited by the magazine rack. 10 minutes. He never came in. Maybe I lost him. Maybe I was wrong. Until I left the store and found a note taped to the passenger side of my car. Just a sticky note, no envelope, no name. Just 5 words. Don't trust either of them. I looked around. No one. Just traffic, rain starting to fall, and my heartbeat in my ears. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my window, my door lock, every sound felt magnified. Even Cooper, usually calm, kept growling at the corner of the room. Around 1 a.m., my phone lit up. No caller ID. I answered. Nothing. Then, a breath. A click. Call ended. I threw the phone on the bed, my hand shaking. The next day, I texted Lucas. I think someone is following me. No response. An hour later, a new number messaged me. Don't involve him. He can't help you now. I stared at the screen. Who was I even dealing with? Claire, some investor from Avedon Tech, someone else entirely. The next week was hell. I started noticing more things. My apartment door was slightly ajar when I came home one day. My laptop had a new folder I didn't remember creating. My landlord said someone came by to check the pipes, but he hadn't called anyone. I was unraveling. So I did something reckless. I went to Claire's office. She worked out of a sleek co-working space in the financial district. I waited in the lobby. When she finally appeared, she didn't look surprised, just amused. I told you this would happen. I need answers, I said. No, you want safety, she corrected. She stepped closer. Lucas always left destruction behind him. He didn't mean to, but he did. You said he was hiding from you. And you think I was the worst thing chasing him? Her smile faded. You have no idea how deep this goes. She handed me a file. This is everything I collected before I walked away. Why give it to me? Because you're already in it. You just don't know your part yet. I took the file, tried to ask more, but Claire had already turned. Walked into her office, closed the door, leaving me alone. When I opened the folder, the first thing I saw was a photo of me, taken 2 weeks ago at the bookstore, smiling, holding a coffee. Someone had been watching me long before I ever noticed. The folder was thick, worn edges, pages that had clearly been handled over and over again. This wasn't something thrown together overnight. This was curated, intentional, dangerous. The first page was a list of names. Mine was third, underlined. Next to it, contact initiated, bookstore encounter, March 17th, target engaged within acceptable timeline, emotional bond established, week 3. My stomach dropped. Target, timeline? What the hell was this? I flipped through the pages. Every moment I thought was chance. The coincidental meeting, the shared taste in literature, the casual mention of my favorite author, all mapped out like a business strategy. Emails between Lucas and someone unnamed. She fits the profile, clean background, minimal family ties, predictable emotional behavior. Begin phase two after first intimate contact. I slammed the folder shut, gasping. I felt violated in ways I didn't have words for. Every kiss, every late night conversation. Not love, not fate, but tactics. I forced myself to keep reading. There were surveillance photos. Me leaving my apartment, walking my dog, meeting my best friend Marissa for lunch. Some from angles I didn't even recognize, meaning someone had been close, very close. Then came something even worse. A document labeled potential leverage points, my name at the top. Underneath, former employer, terminated after whistleblowing internal fraud. Therapy sessions, indicated fear of abandonment. Estranged father, location unknown, presumed deceased. One close friend, Marissa, contact observed, non interfering. My vision blurred. Tears, rage, both. I wasn't just a bystander in this twisted web. I was a mark, a calculated entry point. Suddenly, the love bombing made sense. The way he always knew what I was thinking. How he said the right things at the perfect time. He wasn't reading my heart. He was reading my file. And then I saw it. The last page. A printed photo. Not of me, but of my mother. Smiling, holding a baby. Me. Behind her was a man I didn't recognize. Young, sharp-eyed, and standing next to him, Claire Young. There was a handwritten note on the back. They said she'd never find out. I dropped the folder. The room spun. What was Claire doing in a photo with my mother? 30 years ago, I called Marissa, hand shaking. You remember that box of old photos I showed you once from my mom's attic? Yeah? Can you check if there's one with a woman named Claire in it? Claire, like your ex's psycho business partner? Just check. 5 minutes later, she texted she texted me a picture. There she was, Claire Young, standing in the background. Same cold eyes. Same necklace. What does this mean? I whispered. I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were clicking. Lucas wasn't the start of this story. He was just a player in a much older game. And I was born into it. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Now you know, ready for the next move? I stared at the screen. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Yes, I replied. Let's finish this. I stared at the photo again. My mother, barely in her 20s, holding me as a baby. And standing just a few steps behind her, Claire Young. Same face, same eyes, same necklace. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. But Claire didn't do coincidence. I drove to my mother's old house the next morning. It had been vacant for years since she passed away. I still had the key. Still remembered the sound the front door made when it stuck. Still knew exactly where the photo boxes were. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by dust and time. Old birthdays, Christmas mornings, my first day of school, all frozen and glossy for up by sixes until I found it. Another photo. This time clearer, my mother. A man next to her, arm around her waist, and Claire, standing beside them, smiling like she belonged there. On the back, Maddie, Mark, Claire, San Diego, 1993. Mark. I had never heard that name before. My mom never talked much about the past. I was raised by her alone. No dad in the picture, no explanations. She always said, some stories are better left buried. But now that story had come looking for me. I took the photo and drove straight to the county records office. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, property deeds. I had to know. And there it was. Mark Weston, married to Madeline Weston, my mother. Divorced a year after I was born. No death certificate. Just gone. But something else stood out. Mark had one business associate listed under a shared LLC. Claire Young. My chest tightened. Claire wasn't just some former colleague of Lucas. She was entwined with my family, years before Lucas even entered my life. But why? Why follow me now? Why send Lucas into my life? Unless this wasn't about love or revenge. Unless it had always been about control. I pulled out my phone and texted the anonymous number from before. I know about Mark. I know Claire knew my mother. The reply came instantly. Then you know why she chose you. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling. Why? Another message. Because you're the last loose end. A chill ran through me. I felt the weight of that sentence settle deep in my bones. Loose end of what? What was I part of? That night I met Marissa at a diner. I needed anyone to help me anchor myself. She listened as I explained everything. The photos, the records, the message. So you're saying Claire targeted you because of something your mom was part of? Yes, and I think Lucas was either sent to distract me or protect me, maybe both. Kent, this is insane. I know, but it's real. Marissa looked around, then leaned in. So what now? I dig deeper. I find Mark if he's still alive. You're going to find the father you've never met. If he knows why Claire is in that photo, I have to. Marissa nodded slowly. I'll help. When I got home that night, another envelope was taped to my door. No return address. Inside, a single piece of paper. Typed. Neat. Precise. Stop looking. Some ghosts prefer to stay dead. You were never meant to remember, neither was your mother. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor, the message clenched in my hand. Stop looking. Some ghosts prefer to stay dead. You were never meant to remember, neither was your mother. I thought I knew what pain felt like. But this was a different kind. It wasn't sharp or sudden, it was slow, heavy, like the kind of ache that sits in your chest and makes breathing feel like betrayal. I called Marissa in the morning. We need to find him, my father. She didn't hesitate. Let's do it. It took us 3 days. 3 days of phone calls, digital records, and old court documents, until finally a P.O. box in Northern California, connected to a trust fund with two names, Mark Weston and Claire Young. There it was again. Her name. Always there, always watching. We found him. Living off grid. A cabin by the mountains. No social media, no public records since 1999. And yet, when I showed up on his doorstep with the photo in hand, he wasn't surprised. You look like your mother, he said. His voice was tired. His hands shaken. And when I asked him about Claire, he sat down, closed his eyes, and whispered, I hoped this day would never come. He told me everything. How he and Claire had started Avedon Tech in the early 90s. How my mother, Madeline, was the one who warned him that Claire was hiding money. How Madeline had discovered something dark in Claire's offshore accounts. And how she was threatened. Silenced until she led. Disappeared from the tech world, took me and ran. She saved you, my father said. That's why she never told you about me. Not because I abandoned you, but because she thought if you stayed hidden, Claire would never find you. He handed me a box, old letters, photos, journal pages from my mom, and one audio cassette, labeled, for her if she ever asks. That night, I sat in my motel room, alone, with an old tape player, and I pressed play. My mother's voice. So soft, so familiar, it broke me. Baby girl, if you're hearing this, it means you went looking. And if you went looking, I'm sorry. I kept so much from you because I was afraid, not of what you'd find, but of what it would take from you. Claire is dangerous. She doesn't destroy with guns or knives. She destroys with charm, with promises, with perfectly calculated love. I know because I once trusted her too. And Lucas? He was a boy when I knew him, the son of one of Claire's earliest associates. I don't know who he became, but if he's near you now, maybe, just maybe, he found a way to escape her too. The tape clicked to a stop, and I just sat there crying because the woman I thought I'd lost, she had never really left me. She had just spent her life trying to protect me. I drove back the next morning, straight to Lucas. Yes, Lucas, not Ethan. No more lies, no more masks, just him. He opened the door slowly. He looked tired and on a year older than, not because of time, but because truth ages us. I thought I'd never see you again, he said quietly. I found her voice, I whispered. She forgave you, long before I did. He stepped aside, let me in. We sat on the couch. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was warm. You lied, I said, so much, but not about how you looked at me. His eyes softened. You were never part of the plan, he said. That's why it all fell apart. I couldn't lie to you forever. I reached into my bag, handed him a photo. My mother, smiling, holding me. She wanted you to escape too. He looked at the photo for a long time, then said, I want to start over, really start over, no aliases, no schemes, no shadows. And for the first time, I believed him. Not because he promised, but because I didn't need the promise anymore. Sometimes love doesn't survive truth, but sometimes it's born from it. Claire disappeared after that. No more messages, no more letters. Like a ghost finally released. Maybe she realized she lost control. Maybe she just moved on to another game. But me, I stayed. With Lucas, with my truth, with the pain and the healing. We moved to a quiet town by the coast, started slow. No pretending, no rushing. Just real. And every Sunday, we walk along the cliffs. Lucas holds my hand, I hold his past, and together, we carry our future. I still hear my mother's voice sometimes. In the wind, in the waves. And I know She didn't just save me from Claire, she saved me for this.